Well, I'm doing something that I haven't done since 2019, and that is a single book review. Even in 2019, the last time I'm pretty sure I posted a single book review, they were few and far between at that point as well. So basically, I've been trying to steer away from negativity on my channel, and I'm going to try really hard to not be negative. This is a good book review, by the way. I just want to preface that by saying, but I have negative thoughts surrounding the way other people have perceived and reviewed this book, and I want to try my best to talk about it in a respectful way. But let's get into the review first. So the book that I'm reviewing is Again But Better by Christine Riccio, which I adored this book. I enjoyed the heck out of it. Okay, it was really good. I gave it 5 stars. It was fantastic. I couldn't put it down. It was so good. So Again But Better is about Shane, who is 20 years old and has never kissed a boy. She's never even come close to having a boyfriend. She doesn't really have any friends. She's currently in, I think, her 3rd year of university in pre-med. Goes home every weekend. Doesn't take part in any kind of university, school, dorm life. And she has decided to make a change. And she's going to force herself to put herself out there. So she signs up for a study abroad program in England, but lies to her parents about it. They think she's doing pre-med stuff, and she's actually taking a writing course. She is doing the things that she has always wanted to do, but been too afraid to do it. She's going to put herself out there. She's going to get a boyfriend. She's going to kiss a boy. She's going to make friends, all that cool stuff. Except that she's very awkward. She tries very hard to be cool, and is just incredibly awkward, which I thought was hilarious. She's just very awkward, and I very much enjoyed it. That's not all there is to the story. Obviously, she has to deal with a lot of things surrounding the fact that she is lying to her parents. And it has a lot about her discovering herself and all that kind of stuff. There is a twist kind of thing that happens halfway through, but it's not talked about in the synopsis, so I'm not going to tell you what it is. But there's like a big game changer that happens halfway through the story, which was fun. And I knew what this kind of twist was before going into it, because a lot of people spoiled it on Twitter when this book was new. But it was a little bit different than I was expecting, which was cool. And just that little difference made the whole second half of the story different than what I thought it was going to be. Like, the story turned out, and like the whole journey of the second half of the story was very different than I thought it was going to be, because of this minor thing that was different than I thought was going to happen. Because of this thing that was slightly different than I was expecting, the story was able to progress quite differently because of that. I think that makes a little bit more sense. Now, I guess we'll get into the review portion of it. So I loved Shane's awkwardness. I thought she was hilarious. All of the pink tabs are things that made me laugh out loud or snort or chuckle. And the first half definitely is funnier than the second half. The second half is more about like redemption and stuff like that. But I still enjoyed the second half for sure. I just really enjoyed all the funny stuff. It does have a little bit of Shane's writing in it, which is kind of cool. My favorite thing about Shane's writing that we got to read was in one of her writing classes before class begins. The professor hands out a postcard to everyone, and she uses them to write to her parents without actually writing to her parents, and she's telling them all of the things she wished she could tell them if they knew what she was actually doing in England. And I that was like my favorite part of being able to read her writing. The other parts that we got to read were her journal. And there was nothing wrong with her journal writing. It didn't make me enjoy the story less. I just feel like it didn't make the story any different because it's already written in the first person. So hearing about her experiences through her journal was, I think, the same as it would have been if it was just through narration. It wasn't any different. Maybe the writing was a little bit more casual and a little bit more summarized, but I feel like that still could have happened through narration if it was something she didn't want to give too much detail about anyway in the book. So I just feel like that wasn't really necessary, but it didn't make the story worse or anything. Like, it didn't make me dislike it. I just thought that was an interesting choice. There are a lot of pop culture references in this, mostly about the TV shows that they watch and the music that they listen to, which brings you back to the year that this takes place in, which is 2011. So it was very nostalgic and fun in that way. Also, Shane loves Lost, and I loved the way she talked about it. I thought it was hilarious. I also love Lost, so I thought it was great that was like one of her favorite TV shows. I read this in 3 days. I think I couldn't put it down. I was up later than I wanted to be every night that I read this because I just needed to keep reading, either because it was so funny and I was enjoying it so much, or I was at a point in the story where I just needed to know how it was going to continue and what was going to happen next. I thought it was very easy reading, in a not a bad way, in a fun way, that I just wanted to keep reading it. And it was just a fun, cute, hilarious story that I thought had like a good love story also. One of the things that I did really enjoy about this, which I feel like a lot of people disliked about this, probably just because they haven't experienced what Shane experienced. Like, I feel like a lot of the people who disliked the way Shane acted towards all of the ways that she acted in the story surrounding love and friends, everyone thought she was very immature. It makes me feel like when people say that she was immature, that, like, first of all, most 20-year-olds are not mature in a way that people want them to be in books, I guess. But it was her first time ever experiencing possibly being with a boy, kissing a boy, all that kind of stuff, which is scary no matter what age you are. And I feel like a lot of people, and this is just, obviously a theory that I have that could very well be very wrong. I don't want to tell people what they're thinking, obviously, or how they're feeling. But it seems like most of these people who think she's being immature probably were not late bloomers in the love department and had these probably exact same feelings when they were younger. But because they were younger, it seems like this is a feeling for young people to have. But this is a feeling that happens to everybody, no matter how old you are. Or maybe not everybody. So I'm sure there are people out there who are not nervous about kissing someone for the first time. But it's pretty common too, right? And I'm also a late bloomer in the love department. I didn't have my first kiss until I was 21. I totally felt for Shane and understood what she was going through. And it was really fun. It's very, very incredibly rare for me to read a book and feel like I relate to the character in any way. Most of the time I just read books because they sound good. And I like the characters because I think they're interesting. And I love reading about other people's experiences. To me, it is not a requirement to relate to a character in order to enjoy their story. I mean, if that was, I would enjoy 6 books that I've read. Like, it is a bonus. It is a very fun bonus for me to relate to a character in a story. And it so rarely happens to me where I feel seen in a character or in a story. And I felt seen through Shane. And it's so rare to have a TV show, a movie, a book about somebody who is past high school and hasn't experienced any of that. First of all, it's not as common. It is, I feel like, way more common than people like to think, but it's not as common as people doing all of this stuff in high school. But there's like this stigma around, not having a significant other or not having done certain things sexual-wise with people by a certain age, and there's nothing wrong with experiencing these things whenever it happens to you, no matter when it is. I don't know. I really enjoyed reading about someone who was in university, who was 20 years old and had not yet experienced that, and wanted it to happen, but was still afraid of it happening. I totally understand that, wanting this and still being like, oh, but what do I do? I can't do it. And then also, like, you build it up in your head too because you've waited longer than other people, and so it needs to be perfect, all these kinds of things. And I really enjoyed being able to see myself in a character in a book in that way because it so rarely happens. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is some of the criticisms that Christine got on this book when it came out that I do feel like are unfair. I feel like people are holding Christine to a higher standard than they would any other author with also their debut book, which is not always as good as their later books, because obviously people continue to get better at their craft, And so an author is going to probably get better as they write and publish more books, right? And I feel like, so I also want to say I am not like a fan of Christine. I don't like dislike her. I don't know her. But I have never watched one of her videos all the way through. I have no bias in this. I am not defending her because I'm a longtime fan or because I think that she's a nice person and deserves it. None of that. I don't know her at all. I know of her. I know who she is. That is it. But I feel like because people were watching her, I'm from hearing people talk on the internet, she did like writing vlogs and stuff like that, or vlogs about her writing this book specifically, I'm pretty sure. And people were so excited to read this book because they watched her journey of this book come to life. And so they were expecting it to be this masterpiece, which most books are not masterpieces, for one. Most media is not a masterpiece. And I feel like people were expecting a masterpiece. And there's nothing wrong with writing a book that is not a masterpiece. I have books published that you can check out if you like. Links will be down below. They're not masterpieces. I have never claimed and will never claim that they are masterpieces. Most things do not hit the nail on the head every single time with every single aspect of the media that people are consuming. Most people, when they read a book, they want to have a good time. They want to enjoy it. And I feel like people were expecting this book to blow them out of the water. So I think that they were disappointed when it wasn't the best thing they've ever read, which I don't know why they were expecting it to be the best thing they've ever read. It was her first book, and it's not groundbreaking. It's a fun book. Just like none of my books are groundbreaking, but they are good. They're fun books. And I can say confidently that I think they're good books. I don't think they're masterpieces. And I hope people aren't expecting them to be. And the other thing that I think people were being unfair about is that people were criticizing this for being a self-insert book. Which, if you don't know what that terminology means, it basically just means that they've inserted themselves as the main character. And even though they don't have the same name as the main character, they have a lot of the same thoughts on life, they have a lot of the same mannerisms, maybe even a lot of the things that happen in the book have happened to the author. Which is very common, I feel like, especially in debuts. And it's also very common in just a lot of writing. Like, you can see authors in their writing, in their characters, in the way the stories are told, if you know them. And I feel like people, probably half the books that they've read, maybe not half, but a lot of the books that these people have read are self-insert books, and they just don't know it because they haven't watched the authors on YouTube for years prior to reading their book. All of my books have pieces of me in them, especially in the main characters. And it's not that I'm like, ooh, I want to write a book and I'm going to pretend I'm the main character, and when I read it, it'll feel like it's happening to me and I can make all the cool stuff happen to me. That's not what I'm doing, and I'm going to say that's not what she was doing or what most people do. But it is very easy, for one, to write about your own experiences, to write about your own thoughts, or to draw, not just write about your own experiences, but to draw on your own experiences. But it helps fuel the power and the passion in your writing when it's something that you feel passionate about. And a lot of the times when you feel passionate about something, it's because it's something that has happened to you or around you or to someone you know. I feel like it helps make good stories when you write about things that you are passionate about. And of course, people are passionate about themselves and about things that they've experienced or things they've wanted to experience or ways they wish they could be. And there's nothing wrong with doing that in a book, especially if it helps make a good book. Oh, the other thing too is there is an author's note at the beginning. Maybe all the people who were upset about this being a self-insert book skipped that. But it starts off by saying, the book you've picked up is the one I needed to read in college. Okay? And it goes on to say some of the similarities between her and Shane. And it ends by saying, again but better is fiction, but inspired by my own experiences. She tells you right at the beginning that this book is about her experiences, and you are all getting mad at her for writing about her experiences. And it's okay if you thought the book wasn't good. That's allowed. Everybody is allowed to feel however they feel about any kind of media, as long as it's not hurting anybody. But I feel like people are holding this book and this author to unfair standards just because of who she is. I feel like a lot of people, I just kind of like perused through the Goodreads reviews after I read this, because it had a lower rating than I was expecting, to be honest, on Goodreads. And a lot of the people are also authors who have not been traditionally published, who I think are just salty that she got a book deal because she's popular, which is funny because if you were popular and you got a book deal, you would also take it. So I feel like a lot of these things, yeah, I can understand why people will feel resentment towards things because we're all trying just as hard. Like the small person who doesn't have a big following is trying really hard to get people to know about their books, and they're not working any less hard than the person who has a big following and is able to sell a lot of books because a lot of people know who they are. That popular person is also not working any less hard. Like, I totally understand the initial, like, feeling of jealousy when somebody gets something that you want just as badly and they get it just because they're popular. But obviously, they're popular. They're going to sell books. People know who they are. They're going to buy their book no matter what it's about. And that is a selling feature to publishing companies, which makes sense. I was jealous of her too when it came out. I was like, oh, she's got a book deal because she's famous and she's selling all of these books and is becoming a bestseller because she's famous. But you know what? If that happened to me, I'd be excited about it. It doesn't mean that she didn't work as hard just because she already had a bunch of followers. This is all over the place. This is going to take me forever to edit. Anyway, I think that is about all. I enjoyed Again But Better. I read it in 3 days. I couldn't put it down. I thought it was a hoot. And I think people are being a little harsh. I think people are being more harsh on this than they would about the same kind of book if it was written by somebody else. And I guess that's all I have to say. I thought it was a good book. And I think people should give it a chance and be a little bit more open-minded about things. And we're all people. We're all human beings trying our best, and some people just have more advantages and bigger privileges than other people do. And that's just a fact of life, and always has been. It is just more noticeable now because we are seeing it displayed more obviously. But anyway, I thought this book was great.